This message is dedicated to Bobi Wine, Issa Tchiroma, and other leaders of opposition parties across the continent of Africa. Listen, dear people of goodwill. The theater of the predictable have failed opposition strategies and public fatigue feed Africa's ancestral regimes. The cases of the Cameroons and Uganda. Ancestral regimes do not survive by brute force alone. They endure because their opponents repeat predictable mistakes and because a traumatized population is slowly trained to exhaust itself. In the Cameroons under Paul-Barthelemy Biya and Uganda under Yoweri Museveni, authoritarian longevity is sustained by two reinforcing pathologies: electoral ritualism without strategy and cyclical public rage without organization. The opposition trap, competing in a rigged casino. It is often said that repeating the same action while expecting a different outcome is folly. Yet in the Cameroons and Uganda, opposition forces enter electoral coups called elections, whose outcomes are effectively decided at voters' registration long before ballots are cast. Opposition leaders know the architecture: captured electoral commissions, militarized polling stations, pre-filled result sheets, courts subordinated to the executive, and security forces ordered to kill, maim, abduct, and disappear. And still, cycle after cycle, the same strategy is deployed: register, campaign, protest the inevitable theft, bury the dead, await international consent, and return to business as usual. In Uganda, Robert Kyagulanyi, better known as Bobi Wine, faced elections whose violence was announced in advance. An election already rigged. In the Cameroons, figures such as Issa, Tchiroma, Bakari, and others participated in systems where outcomes were structurally foreclosed. Some later accepting minor ministerial posts, thereby laundering tyranny with pluralism. This is not to question courage. It is to indict strategy. When participation is guaranteed to cost lives without altering power, participation becomes a subsidy to repression. How autocrats weaponize participation. Biya and Museveni have perfected a devastating logic. You participated, therefore the system is democratic. Opposition participation, no matter how constrained, becomes Exhibit A in the autocrat's legitimacy case. The regime points to ballots cast under gun barrels and declares victory competitive. International observers note irregularities but validate the process, and the president for life smiles. Each failed electoral cycle justifies more repression to maintain order, enables deeper resource plunder, entrenches security-first governance, and teaches the regime how to steal better next time. Electoral banditry is professionalized, from crude ballot stuffing to digital manipulation, biometric sabotage, legal traps, and targeted terror against organizers. The lesson learned by the regime is not restraint, it is efficiency. The people's cycle: rage, repression, retreat. Alongside opposition ritualism runs a tragic social loop. The people, rightfully angry, erupt when votes are stolen, as we see on the streets of Uganda, as it was on the streets in the Cameroons. Where streets are filled, stones meet bullets, water cannons meet bare chest, bodies fall. Then within hours or days, exhaustion sets in. Trauma seeks anesthesia, alcohol, distraction, sex, and survival routines. Yet the pain never leaves. It is merely postponed. The regime understands this psychology. It plans for short storms not sustained pressure. Time is its ally. Fear is its currency. Why this encourages ancestral rule? These patterns teach the autocrat that nothing fundamental will change. A predictable opposition legitimizes the system. A fatigued populace can be waited out. An international community with issue statements and move on. Thus, ancestral regimes conclude correctly that they can kill, jail, and steal with impunity, then reset the clock for another 5 or 7 years. Beyond street battles and ballot rituals, no serious voice argues that picking up arms is good. War is unspeakable. Violence devours the innocent, yet history is equally clear. Those who make peaceful change impossible make violent change inevitable. John Fitzgerald Kennedy. When elections are permanently criminalized, when courts are captured, when protest is met with live ammunition, pacific democratic change is declared taboo by the regime itself. To protect democracy and human life, opposition parties must go beyond the theater of elections and the futility of spontaneous street clashes to building long-term, non-violent, but disruptive civic resistance. Protect communities through organization, not improvisation. Internationalize accountability before elections, not after. Refuse participation that only certifies fraud, and develop parallel legitimacy rooted in people, not polling stations. And if necessary, pick up arms for the protection of humanity and for the very survival of democracy itself, where responsibility ultimately lies. If upheaval comes, if the opposition pick up arms to safeguard democracy and protect humanity, whether by mass civil rupture, people's revolution, or military fracture, the blame will not rest on the oppressed. It will not be on the heads of the opposition leaders. It will rest squarely on presidents for life who outlaw genuine competition, weaponize elections, criminalize dissent, and close every peaceful door. As Thomas Sankara warned, you cannot carry out fundamental change without a certain amount of madness. The true madness, however, is to expect a people to endure endless electoral banditry, endless mourning, endless hunger, and remain still. Strategy is a moral imperative. Biya and Museveni understand these weaknesses. They have studied them, refined them, and built regimes around them. Therefore, participation without power, protest without protection, and anger without organization are the oxygen that keeps ancestral rule alive. Thus, to win or truly protect democracy, Africa's opposition and citizenry must change the script. Not by just mimicking the regime's violence, but by withdrawing legitimacy, disrupting control, preserving life, and forcing a new political equation. Anything less is not resistance, but rehearsal for the next funeral.